In this video we're going to look at the 5 stages for hanging a door, an internal door. So the first thing we need to do is just place the door, align the door up against the door frame and get a feel for how much you need to take off before it will sit into the rebate of the frame. So at the moment I can't even get the door into the frame, mainly because of the plinth blocks at the bottom on the base there. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is remove 2mm from each side. So I'm going to take 2mm off this edge here. So write down what door it is, write down, take an even amount off both sides so it's not as noticeable. Balance the widths of the door on either side, the frame of the door, balance them out so it stays symmetrical. While I also got the door outside, planing off 2mm from either side, I'm also going to take off some from the top, and again to match I'm going to take some off the base of the door as well. I'll take 3mm off the base, and I'll take 2mm off the top here as well. So I'll just write 2mm on the top. I'll take this outside, I'll plane the top, plane the sides, plane the base, give it a bit of a dust down so I'm not bringing any dust into the house, and then I will then bring it inside, see if it goes into the frame, then mark out for stage 2. Stage 2 of hanging a door would consist of using the following tools. So you've got a marking out gauge. The marking out gauge only has 1 pin, whereas the mortise gauge will have 2 pins. So you get the marking out gauge, steel ruler, electric planer. Make sure that you've emptied the dust bag beforehand. So as well as those, you're going to make sure that you've got a decent dust mask and safety glasses or goggles. So what I've done here is fabricated a jig on a pallet, an old shipping pallet. I've got an old piece of 4x2 there, top of a door frame there. I've nailed them down to the top of the pallet just so that it holds the door in place. Now when I do start planing this, to take the 2mm off this edge, it's important to have a clear line, because although I can set the planer to take off 2mm, it doesn't always work like that. It doesn't always take a consistent 2mm off. So what we do first of all, I'm going to set the marking out gauge to 2mm. So I'll loosen the handle so the block can move, bring it down. I'll put my steel ruler up to the lower side of the block and slide the block down until 2mm is in line with a very sharp point up there. Tighten the screw up. When I apply the marking out block to the surface, when the pin's touching the surface of the door, don't do it square on when you drag. slightly turn, maybe 45 degree, like this, with that sort of. So you're going to slide along this way, otherwise it's not going to. If you just butt it up, it's very difficult. The pin will end up digging into one of the grain ones. So place it on the door. Make sure the block is flush with the surface of the door. Twist it and drag along like this. Once that's done, you can see that, well, I can see it when I'm next to the door, so I'm okay to start planing now. Okay, so I'll show you why. This is why you mark it out before you start planing. You can't rely on that setting. So some parts it's come virtually down to the line, the 2mm line that I'd scratched, but other parts it's nearly a millimetre away, which will give you, I mean, it's not too bad because I've only just replaced the blade in the planer, but it's not perfect just yet. I need to go over carefully now with the planer again and just set it to maybe 1/2 millimetre. Go across the surface, 1/2 millimetre. I'll do both sides of the door. Do the top, maybe do some of the bottom if I've marked it out to be like that. Then I'll take it back inside and commence with stage 3. Stage 3 is bringing the door into the door opening and trying to get it to marry up. Now you've trimmed the edges enough to get it into the door frame, we're going to use one set of windbags, 4 3mm packers, window packers, and pencil and a wood chisel. And this is how we do stage 3. So you're going to place the windbags, make sure they're fully deflated. Place the windbags on the floor, on the threshold for the door. Then place the door into the door frame. It's important that you have the door frame situated about halfway, roughly halfway onto the windbags, and that the open release valve is pointing up on both, so that when you've got your feet you can press down and operate both windbags with your feet. Now we're looking for a 3mm gap, 3mm parallel gap between the door and the door frame all the way around. And if we haven't got that, we need to scribe. For those who don't know what scribe means, it means you're going to, because nothing's perfectly straight, so you'll end up, once you've aligned the door, you will end up dragging the pencil and allowing the door frame to guide the pencil onto the door. So the pencil lead will be on the door, but the frame will be guiding the pencil. That will ensure you have a parallel line running down, contouring the door frame. Start off with one of the packers in the bottom left corner. I'm going to put one in this opposite corner at the top here, because I can see that the gap there, the contour, tapers a little bit. So pump the airbags up. Always looking to make sure as you're pumping the wind bags that they're going up, that you're trying to create that 3mm gap naturally with the wind bags at first, and then you can add the packers later on. So at the moment it looks pretty square. Well, just put this packer up here. I want that to be tight, so I'll put a bit more air in that right hand wind bag, and then I can look around the frame to make sure the gap looks okay. And the top gap there I need to take some more off this part here with the planer. And down here looks okay. So going back to the scribing, what we have to do, lift the door up a bit more. So I get the pencil now. And I want that gap to be the same all the way along. This gap here, this 3mm gap. I know it's 3mm because the packers are 3mm. So if I put the pencil there, and I'll rest the pencil on the door frame or architrave, and bring that line across. So when I take this outside now, I'll be able to plane it. And that is the only part of the door I need to take off. So whilst I'm in here, I'm going to mark out where the hinges. Mark out the hinges so I can rebate those as well, and I will also chisel out and rebate where the latches, well, where the bathroom latch is going, and the holes for the door handle to be attached. Whilst it's outside, I'll also light sand with a contouring pad, so that the door is completely ready and prepped for varnishing for when it comes back inside. That way it reduces all the dust in the house, keep the duster outside as much as possible. So the next step is to go outside, plane the top line there, that's the only part that needs planing. Rebate the hinges, do that with a router. Rebate the latch, do that with a router. Drill into the door for the latch mechanism to go into. I'll use a spade bit for that, and then I will use a 3mm drill bit to prepare for screwing the door handle. Stage 4, what we're going to do is use the dry square, look at where we've marked out for the hinges, and just continue that dash right the way across the back edge of the door on all 3 hinges. So just line the dry square up to the dash that you marked earlier on, next to the door frame hinge cutouts, rebates, and just continue that line across. So what we'll do next is, with the router, we've got a flat cutting bit, and we're going to set the router up to be the depth of the hinge. So you can either just gauge it like this with the hinge next to the router bit, or to be a bit more accurate, just going to get the steel ruler, measure the thickness of the hinge, 3mm, and then we can put the steel ruler next to the blade, and set it at 3mm. So I've used the steel ruler to set the depth, tighten the router up at that depth. I could also double check that the depth is correct by just placing the hinge onto the bottom of the router. So it looks like the hinge is a little bit thinner. I'm going to release the router a little bit. The next thing I'm going to do, this is a 20mm flat bit, by the way. It's a 1/4 inch shank. I could have used a 1/2 inch, but I only have the 1/4 inch one available. So I'm just checking that now, double checking. Okay, that seems about right. It's a little bit deeper than the thickness of the hinge, but that's good. That will work. When the hinge is closed, there's a 3mm gap anyway in there, in between the two hinges. So when the hinge is closed and mounted onto the door frame, there is going to be a 3mm gap running parallel between the door frame and the edge of the door. So the distance I've got that now between, well, the depth that I have the router bit set at now is perfect for using for the hinge. PPE, dust mask, and safety glasses. Quite important to wear the safety glasses with the sort of collar, the rubber collar going around the back of the safety glasses as an extra precaution to prevent any dust. There's going to be a lot of dust flying up from the router, because you've got to chisel away or remove, rebate all this 3mm by 100 by 38mm. That creates a lot of dust, so you don't want to be breathing in or potentially getting any of that dust into your eyes. So we put the respirator or the dust mask on first and put the glasses on. It's quite a high pitched whine coming from the router, so you could either wear ear defenders or just put your music, switch your music on. I'm going to start on the bottom line and go across in a bit of a zigzag or parallel pass, working up to that top line. Before I start routing, what I'm going to do, use my 50mm chisel and just do a couple of sharp taps at the start, and the end, the top and the bottom of where the router is going to be going in a second, and that'll just give you a much neater finish. It's best to do that cut now before you start routing than after, and that will give you much neater finish. There won't be any little bits of wood hanging over where you've stopped with the router. You're just going to neaten that up. So the first one's done. Won't take too long. I'm going to keep the camera filming now to let you see how the second one is done. So watch this space. Right, so after we use the router, you can see it's nice and level. Any small bits that are like this little bit here, it's less than 1 millimeter. All we have to do is use our large chisel again. Straddle the door and just lightly brush over to remove any excess. Go back over these edges again. If they weren't deep enough to start with. Same over here. Just a couple of small taps. And there you have it. Perfect chisel rebate, completed altogether, probably in less than a minute. You can probably mark one of these out, do your cuts to define the top and the bottom of the hinge, rebate with the router, and then neaten up in less than a minute. So all 3 hinges, obviously 3 minutes altogether. Now if you were to try doing that with just the chisel and the hammer, you'd probably take about between 20 minutes and half an hour to do 1 hinge rebate, and it would be messy. It wouldn't be anywhere near as straight. I mean, these rebates here are pretty much perfect. You can pay £200 upwards for a jig to attach to the edge of the doors, and then get your router if you don't feel too comfortable or confident. But it's real easy. You can't really go wrong as long as you've got this collar tight here so that your bit doesn't come loose while you're routing, as long as your the base is tight so that doesn't come loose and change the depth setting that you've got. You can't go wrong. Go nice and steady. You get yourself a jig to hold the door. You're going to be straddling the door. The door's not going to wobble anywhere. It's in between your knees, and you just look over the top of the router, have it turned down to a 4.5. You can always have a practice go first on a scrap piece of wood. So after all 3 hinges have been routed, I'm going to flip the door around and start adding the mortise latch and the holes for the handle. So they're the next thing to do within stage 4. One last thing you want to do before flipping the door over for the mortise latch or the door handle holes. Sander, get your orbital sander, go across where you're playing, just make it smooth as the door was when you put the door out of the polythene wrapping. It's also important to put this rounded edge, this rounded corner back on here, so that when you come to varnish, the varnish has somewhere to stick. If you leave this as a sharp right angle corner, the varnish is going to struggle to stick on there. It's not very nice finish, so just give it, as you're moving the sander along there, just rotate it as well to give that sort of curved, rounded edge all along the edge. Where the edge of the chiseled, rebated chisel part is, just give that a little second or so across there with the sandpaper. You don't have to use it all, so you can use a sanding pad. Just take a bit longer with the sanding pad. So the measurement I'm using for the centre of the door handle is 895. So measure across the top there, top edge, 895. A fatal error to be made here is make sure that you measure from the bottom of the door. Keep an eye where the bottom of the door is. The transom there is usually a lot deeper than the top, obviously depending on the style of the door. So the 895 is going to be from the bottom edge of the door. Measure across there, 895. Pencil line on the top there, on the top edge. And then I'm going to get one of the latches. I always go for a reputable brand, so ERA. You pay a bit more, but it's a much better quality, and it's a company that's been around for years. So since you're doing it yourself anyway, the money you'd save from paying someone, you put into better quality materials and parts. So I'm going to just rest the latch so that the centre of the marking out, just there like this. Pencil a little circle there. That will indicate where the latch, the door handle square bar is going to go right through there. I'm going to drill a hole through there, and then the square bar can come through from one side to the other to join the two latches together, the two handles together, and then the latch will come just there. So what I'm going to use for this next step is it's kind of like a spade bit, but a more modern version of a spade bit. It says it's a faster drilling speed, ultra clean breakthrough. It's the next generation wood drill. I have used it before. It is fantastic, and I do recommend it. Masking tape. So put the masking tape so you know where once you start drilling into the door, you know where to stop. You're going to stop at the bottom of the masking tape. Go any further, you might break through the edge of the door, and then you'll end up ruining the door, particularly if you don't plan on painting the door. You won't be able to hide any issues, any defects. So I'm going to use this spade drill, spade bit, 25mm, down to the depth of the latch. Now, I could have gone for a smaller spade bit with these latches, but if you find that you haven't quite got the right angle perpendicular to the door, you don't want to end up with a latch on a slight 95 degree or whatever that would be. It's got to be perpendicular to the door so it all fits nice, it looks nice, and it works well. So if you oversize the drill bit, you'll have a 2 or 3 millimeters either way to play with the angle. Okay, so top tip here is use your clamp go round the area that you're going to drill. The reason for that is because you are likely to split the door, split it apart like this as you drill through. Especially since it has the threaded end. If you can get these without the threaded end, that would be brilliant, but at the moment there aren't any. These are great for helping you drill the holes, because it brings the drill, it's like a grabbing process. It grabs the drill tip into the wood surface and does the work for you essentially. But for the doors, for these oak doors, it doesn't do any favours. So put the clamp on there first, and then as you drill in, so I had to turn the speed down then because the battery's going flat. So I put it on slow and powerful rather than the fast speed, and because the battery was going, that's why it stopped when I first started that drill then. But as you can see, it didn't take long at all really, and it's a nice clean cut. It's very important that you remove all the sawdust from that hole, because it's going to save your latches from clogging up. If you put the latch in while there's still sawdust in there, you'll end up getting the dust in the mechanism here, and it'll clog the spring up inside the latch, and it'll fail. It'll fail within, I don't know, a couple of years or so. So the hoover nozzle doesn't fit down there with the vacuum nozzle, so I fabricated a little piece of hose pipe and made this really nice adapter, really nice stop boss to attach to the end of the nozzle. Brilliant. Okay, try it out. Yeah, latch fits. So while it's there, draw around the top of it. Use as a template, and I'll know where to. I need to remove the surface of the edge there, so the latch can sit. That latch there is about 1.5 millimeters, maybe 2 mil. I want that to sit flush with the surface of the door, so I need to rebate a rectangle in the top there. I'm going to use my router for that. I'm going to change the bit in the router, use a smaller bit, use an 8mm bit, so I can make this square. Obviously, first of all, I'm going to go round that rectangle with my chisel, a smaller chisel. Right, before I do that rebate for the latch, I'm just going to drill a hole through where the square bar for the handles are going to go, so just through here. And I'm going to use a 20mm regular spade bit for this. Another little tip is when you're drilling through here, when you drill through, don't drill all the way through to come out the other side. You just want to drill through so that the tip of the spade bit comes through, then go around the other side, put the tip of the spade bit through the hole that you just made, and then drill through to meet the two holes in the centre. I'll show you what I mean now. Right, so I've penetrated through the other side of the door and round this side, and then have a nice parallel hole going right through, so there's plenty of room for you to put your square bar in. So there is room for error if you make any mistakes with misaligning the door handle or anything, anything slightly off. You do have some give in that for that tolerance. So now I'm going to rebate the rectangle on the top here. Before I started chiseling, once again, I've got the clamp on there, so that when I start chiseling this little recess, this little rebate, I'm not liable to split the edge of the door. So you've got the clamp on there, it's going to keep it nice and tight. It'll keep it the same width all the time, that 38mm, and you can feel confident now that the door isn't going to split. Use the small chisel first to do these, the top and the bottom of where the latch is going, across there, so that when you chisel around the sides of where the latch will go, you don't have to worry about the grain splitting any further, any higher up, any lower down from where it will be visible. So you sort of you go across the top and bottom first, and that stops any grain split from continuing any further. You chisel these first, stop the grain, so that when you do your vertical chiseling, the split doesn't continue. Okay, so I've now gone round all the sides for where the latch is going. I need to go and swap my route a bit now for a smaller bit. Consistent depth. All we need to do is scrape out the corners with your small chisel again. Just get into the corners and scrape them out. Another 30 seconds and that'll be done. So, moment of truth. Let's have a look. Okay, so it's the right width. Just need to take a little bit off the top there, and then at the back of the plate, the latch plate here, you can see where the countersunk screws will go in through the holes there, and so the top of the countersunk screw can be flush with the front of the plate. There's a little sort of rebate there as well. So what I need to do to make revisions for this, I'm going to use the countersink bit on the drill. First of all, place the latch there, and then with the pencil just mark out where it needs drilling. I'll drill those holes there, 2.5mm drill bit, and then countersink the top of the drill holes. Okay, so I've done a bit of neatening up. The chisel just had to bring this top line, move this top line up a millimetre. I've also countersunk where the screw holes are going, and now I can place the latch in there. Couple of mistakes really. this bottom line went over a little bit too much with the chisel and not quite got the right angle at the top there. However, the screw holes line up. The latch is parallel, even gap either side of the door edge, and it's going, the latch will come out perpendicular to the edge of the door. So all in all, not bad, just a couple of mistakes which require improvement on the next one. It's important to use a hand screwdriver when you attach these screws, or when you attach the latch with the screws it came with. If you use a motorized, cordless or power driver, etc., it's likely to have too much torque and it'll just either snap the head off the screw, or it'll help to round off the thread inside of the wood. So just use, I've had this one for years, just a snap on ratchet screwdriver. You can control the power then, and it doesn't take too long. When it comes to fitting the hinges, I would use my impact driver just to get the bulk of the thread out the way, and then just finish it off with a hand screwdriver, just to make sure that you don't damage the door frame or the edge of the door. Right, so I've just sanded up the edge after the planing. I've just put the rounded corner across here, so I'm going to lay it flat, lay the door flat now, and use this Norton contouring pad just to get all these moulding strips nice and smooth, get all these nice and smooth, just so the door's completely ready for varnishing once it's inside the house. I don't want to be sanding the door once it's in the house and creating all this extra dust unnecessarily. So completely prepare the door surface now before you take it in, and then once I do take the door in, it'll be a case of putting the hinges onto the door frame and then attaching the door frame, attaching the door to the hinges, and that will be stage 5. Okay, thank you. The final stage is to hang the door onto the previously rebaited door frame. So the first thing you're going to do here is make sure you hinge. These hinges, they can go either way round, but there is text on there, so I want the text to be the correct way up. Therefore, I'm going to position the hinge into place like so, and then I'm going to use a centre punch. I'm going to put the hinge into position and then get the centre punch to push a little dent into the centre of the hole, so that it's easier for lining up and centralising the drill bit. So the screws I'm using for this are 3.5mm hinge screws. So I'm going to use a 3mm drill bit. It's quite close, the 3mm to the 3.5, but it will prevent any sort of splitting on the door frame on this pine wood, and it will prevent the splitting on the oak door as well. So 3mm drill bit onto the small dent there from the centre punch. That will guide, it's like a pilot hole, that will help guide the drill bit into the correct position, and will hopefully mean that when you attach the hinge, the screws will line up centrally to the holes. Drill all your holes. Have a pile of your screws there, ready to use. Get your 3 hinges. And then when you attach the hinge, you want to put one at the top, screw at the top first, screw at the bottom, make sure it's in line, make sure the pivoting bar here, make sure that's got the same gap at the top away from the door frame as it has at the bottom as well. Tighten, well, don't tighten the screw up just yet, just put that one in loose, put the bottom one in loose, and then use your ratchet screwdriver to just tighten the final last couple of turns. Just tighten it up with the screwdriver. Don't use your impact driver for driving the screws all the way in, because you'll end up ruining the thread inside the wood. So I'm just doing these 2 screws evenly, just to make sure that the hinge goes flush with the face of the door frame. I would then put the middle 2 screws in, same way. Get the majority with the electric screwdriver or impact driver, and then just finish it off the last couple of turns with your screwdriver, your manual screwdriver or ratchet screwdriver. So preparation for bringing the door up, you're going to have the top hinge at 90 degrees. The middle hinge will be closed completely, so it's not in the way. And the lower hinge will also be at 90 degrees. And then you're going to have the 2 windbags, one here, and the other one, where I can find it, will be here. You bring the door in, place the door across the text of the windbags. Make sure that the rebated hinge cutout is at the right height. First of all, you want to make sure the bottom of the door rebate is in line with the bottom of the top hinge. Then you can put your first screw through the top of the top hinge. That'll be the first screw you attach, and then come down, and top of the bottom hinge will be the second screw that you attach. Then you can take away the windbags and see how the door fits into the frame. So this is one of the other doors that I'm currently working on installing. The gap in between the frame and the door isn't big enough here. I'm going to have to take the door off and plane up to about here. It's okay from there upwards, it's 3mm. I just need to make the door take some off the door here so the gap's a bit better. I also need to take some off the bottom of the door. I can see here I already marked out, just didn't see it when I took the door outside before to do its final planing. When I open the door, it rubs on the carpet. Other than that though, it's a good fit. Parallel fit all the way around. So I'm going to take the door off, do this planing, plane the bottom, put the door back on, and then attach the handle, and then that will be completed.